Welcome to The Thread. This is a space for fresh perspectives on Christian leadership, global culture, and evangelism in our fast-changing world. Hosted by me, Stephen Foster, and brought to you by Alpha. And it's a real joy and a privilege to have as our guest today Dan Blythe. And Dan is the Global Youth Director for Alpha. He has this job that spans the globe. He's the pioneer behind the latest Alpha youth film series, making amazing inroads right across the world and helping lots and lots of young people discover and develop a relationship with Jesus. Dan, it's such a joy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for doing this podcast. I think we need this sort of conversation, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Dan, start us off. Tell us how you came to encounter Jesus and follow him.
Yeah, I think it really started when I was 10. Mum and dad got divorced, neither of them Christian at the time. And then my dad encountered Jesus, my mum encountered Jesus. They both remarried other partners who were Christian. And so from the age of 11, I was taken to church every Sunday. And even though I was aware God was real because my parents' lives had totally changed, all I saw was the rules, regulations, religion. Don't do this, don't do that. And so I thought it's for them, not for me. Teenage years were very messy. Age 18, I couldn't live up to this Christian standard that my parents had for me. So I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. I thought, at least it's warm. I just enjoy the sunshine and the beaches. And there, in my very first week of being in Sydney, Australia, I met some Christians. And they invited me boxing, surfing, to a connect group. And after spending 1 week with them, I knew there was something very, very different about them. I live for the weekend, they live for something much greater. I live for the moment, they live for significance. And everything my parents had showed me and prayed for and kind of lived out just went from black and white to color. And I knew in that moment I wanted to give my life to Jesus. So age 18, I did.
Wow! And since then, Dan, you've had so many amazing leadership roles, and you've been on this real leadership journey over the years. Are there kind of particular moments in your leadership journey which kind of stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely loads. In Bible college, I started when I was 18. And when you spend X amount of years stuffing up your life, it doesn't always get healed in the moment.
Yeah,
Sometimes it
yeah.
does, but sometimes it doesn't. And I was at Bible college and I was still doing some things that were not even acceptable at Bible college. But every time I got called into the principal's office and he said, "Hey, Dan, I've heard you done this and I heard you like lived your life like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really sorry." He just showed me grace and love and mercy. And in that place, I just saw gracious leadership, leaders that kind of saw potential and poured into leaders, even though they didn't have their life all together. And I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for them. After Bible college, age 21, I went straight back to England because I thought if I could just help one teenager encounter God's grace, that's what I want to do. I managed to get a job in Canterbury as a youth leader, 30 young people, half of them off a local estate, which is a poor community in the area, half of them church kids grown up. And there was just such unity there. And it was like putting out chairs by myself. It's like everything about youth ministry, which isn't glamorous, I did every day and I loved every minute of it. And it was great to be in an environment which was very different to the church where I got saved in. There were some people who were cessationists, didn't believe in the gifts of the Spirit, hyper Calvinists, didn't believe in evangelism. And so, even though we had very different doctrine and theological points of view, we were all focused on Jesus. And that sense of unity in the middle of what could have been a divisive situation was like a massive leadership thing for me. So, yeah, I mean, I could go on, but all the way through my life as learning to be a leader, it's been just good not to ever be a professional where you know everything, to
Right.
always be a beginner and a sponge and soak in.
And tell us, Dan, because I think you've got almost like a unique perspective on the global church, especially in terms of the rising generations, Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And you're traveling the globe a lot. You're speaking to lots of people from across the denominations, lots of different national churches, lots of different movements in all the different continents. And what is it you're seeing amongst the rising generation, emerging generation at this time? And what excites you?
Yeah, I mean, I like that term, emerging generation, rising generation, next generation. But I guess the one thing I'm seeing is they're more of like the now generation.
Yeah.
Like over my 20 years of youth ministry, if I said, "Do you want to run Alpha in your school or do you want to invite a friend to youth?" Like you'd have to like proper do everything you can to get them there, like free bouncy castle and pizza, and we're giving away a Tesla. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you had to try so hard to get them there. But now it's like it's not like that. It's like young people have this like courage and confidence that only comes from God and comes from a hunger and a desperation. And so they're the ones doing the evangelism. They don't even need to come to church, even though they are inviting them into spaces. So I think, yeah, the one thing I'm seeing is that they're not so much the rising, but they have risen because they believe in the risen Jesus. And because of that, they've got this courage, which is encouraging us all, really.
Yeah, and I think that is a real feature of this moment, is that we've got the boldness you see in kind of teenagers. So we've got one guy who's become a Christian, we've baptized at our church, and he's inviting like classes of people in his school, like the whole class to church, and bringing them, and just bringing whole rows of people, and heavily involved in Alpha, and other teenagers who are kind of want to lead Alpha together, and I think you're right. It's just they're very much leading from a very young age. And is that something you see kind of happening across the globe? Is it something about these generations that they're like, right, we're going to step up, we're going to step in?
Yeah, it is happening all around the globe. And I just want to say for all the listeners, I think it's the prayers of the generations that have gone before. I remember 20 years ago, age 21, praying for revival. And the 65-year-old man, I said, go on, Dan, keep going. Because I kind of prayed this prayer out loud in a prayer meeting. And I thought, oh no, I shouldn't pray for revival. What we're talking about here, like no one's in church. And he was just this kind of prayer warrior, 65-year-old guy going, no, go on, keep praying, keep praying. And I think of him when I see what we're seeing now. I don't think it's like because of the gifts and skill or ability of any youth leaders or youth workers or youth directors. It is because of the prayers that have been poured into this generation, which has enabled a hunger and a passion, but also an openness. And I think that's what it is. Because of the digital revolution, young people are getting changed by Jesus and then sharing that change online. And so they're the most global organization than ever before. And so instead of being in an echo chamber where you just believe what everyone around you believes, you're more open. And now that might be a negative for some people because we know there's also a spiritualness is heightened. Like there's more people doing crystals than ever before. There's witchcraft is rising. So it's not just Christianity. There's a whole spiritual dynamic which young people seem to be open to. But I think this time right now is very exciting for the church and for Christianity.
So it's so exciting. And what do other things you see, Dan, in these generations that as you go around the world, you're thinking, there's something that is that's going to be an amazing gift to the world that they carry. There's something because often if you're in a generation, you don't realize what you carry because you think everyone's the same. And sometimes when you're in a different generation, you think, oh no, there is something exciting and unique about you. And that's different. And you carry that. And that's going to be an amazing gift to your generation, to the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things I could talk for so long, and it's hard sometimes because the world just labels this generation in such a negative way. And whenever I'm with young people, I always try and encourage them. The only person who can label something is the creator of the created. So my medicine has a label on, which I'm very grateful on, tells me what's in it, when I should take it. But only the creator of the medicine can label the medicine. And in the same way, I just try and encourage, young people that no matter what negativity the world is putting out there about you, they don't have authority or responsibility to do that. Only God can label you, and He says that you're a son and daughter of the Most High, that you're a masterpiece, that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I always just try and encourage them, especially because labels can be such a sensitive subject. Yeah. But if I was to kind of dive into one thing that I think this generation is bringing to the world in a beautiful way, it'd just be authenticity. And I notice this in all areas of their life. It's not just one area. So like when I was growing up, I'd be happy to wear a fake pair of Levi's because I couldn't afford real Levi's. But for this generation, they would rather slow fashion than fast fashion. They would rather save up the money and get a real authentic pair of Levi's rather than a fake pair. And this kind of flows out into all areas of their life. And so when they come to church, when they go into culture, when they go into their schools, universities, what they're really looking for is authenticity. And if it's fake, if it's manufactured, they can just like sniff it out like a hound dog. Like they've got such a sense of understanding of what fake is. And so it's really important for us as the church that we don't try and fake it. But I actually think the most beautiful thing is that actually when I go around the different churches, different denominations, because of our relationship with Jesus Christ, like the church, the people I meet, like they are authentic. And so my biggest encouragement to them is like, you don't need to try and create a super slick, smooth youth program. You don't need to try and be ultra relevant using their language. Just be your authentic self and you will be able to connect with a young person. And that's what they're looking for.
One of the things I love, Dan, that you've really brought is just an unrelenting focus on listening to the young people we're trying to reach and partner with and inspire. And just say a bit about that, because circles and spaces, it's like providing space, circles and spaces, not rows, and then with the youth film series as well. Just talk a bit about your passion for that church being listening to the rising, or the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and listening to young people, and where that comes from in you, and why you think that's so important.
Yeah, I love the church. I think obviously it's the bride of Christ. I love the church with everything I have, but the church are slow adopters in this area of listening to young people, where brands and companies are not. Because Gen Z is the biggest generation on the planet, 25%, and Gen Alpha is going to supersede that. Brands and companies know that if they do not change their models and their marketing, their systems and their structure to involve and engage with the younger generation, they will go bust and they will not make profit. So they spend millions on listening to teenagers so that they can create in a way where they can make profit. And so what breaks my heart is that sometimes, as the church, we aren't listening to young people. But I think, like, how much more should we listen to young people than brands and companies? Because we're not doing it to make profit off them. We're doing it to empower them, encourage them to be everything that God has called them to be. So any opportunity I have with any church leader is never to like put condemnation or guilt or shame for not listening, but to just try and invite them that this is a new season and God is doing something very fresh. And if you haven't listened to young people before, like, why not start now and just swing wide the doors and just let young people know that they don't need to go to ChatGPT or Google with all their questions, that they can come into a community, a safe space, and wrestle with those big things. Most people I chat to, they say, oh, I don't want to create space for questions because I don't have all the answers. But a lot of the time, when I chat to young people, I say I don't have all the answers, and they're okay with that. They're not looking for us all to have all the answers. They just want to journey with us in the exploration of the answers. And I think the final thing on listening, that our church, our optics, is that all of our church buildings have rows. So visually, we're saying, come to church and listen to the preacher or the teacher teach some great theological, biblical points, which is awesome. But sometimes on the first point the preachers preach, the young people have 10 questions. And so, yeah, the reason I kind of talk about circles is because when I look at the Gospels, Jesus clearly preached to people in rows. He preached the gospel to many, but then he did his discipleship in circles. And I think it's important that we have rows and circles, place for preaching and teaching, and place for discipleship and questions. And I'll just finish on this just while it's in my head. I think naturally we go, evangelism, you're non-Christian, ask all the questions you have. That's okay.
Yeah.
Discipleship. Be quiet and listen. I'm teaching you now. But if we could keep that same culture of it's okay to ask questions wherever you are in your journey, and keep that kind of dialogue that Jesus had with his disciples, then I think that would be a really healthy space.
Yeah, that's so inspiring, Dan. That's so inspiring. Help us with that. If there's a church leader or someone who's a youth leader listening, and they're thinking, yes, that's definitely what I want to do. Help people see what that might look like, because I think is a really inspiring vision to say, almost like the way in is the way on. And so we really, with Alpha and Youth Alpha, we're really providing spaces, circles and spaces. But then how do we build that into some of the things that come afterwards?
Yeah. I mean, we've already done these things for years, like whether it's like the small group, whether it's like the dinner party, the table, the hangout, the barbecue, all that kind of stuff. And so I would just say, make sure you're investing equally in those circle spaces as you are in the rows. So often, I'd speak from like my own failures in youth ministry, leading youth ministry for years. We'd put all of our money, all of our resources, all of our time into the evangelistic event, which was great. Everybody knew where it was, when it was, and what was going to happen there.
Yeah.
And then we'd go, and if you want to, check out a connect group, check out a small group, where really, I guess all I'd say is just look at what you have in terms of your circles and see if you're giving it the same amount of prayer, the same amount of investment and time, and just make sure that your congregation, your community know that actually the two go together. It's a double-sided coin, and just keep doing what you're doing. I think youth ministry used to be a lot about come and see, which is great. And I think that's still needed and will happen. But I think there's a shift where it's more, I'm going to go to you. Yeah. And I know youth leaders which might not have, a lot of bums on seats on a youth night, but that youth leaders going to sports events when they're competing. They're praying with them on the phone the night before the exam, and they're hanging out for a Nando's the day after they get the results and they failed the exams. Now, you can't measure those metrics as much. They don't look as great on a social media post. But I think if we can just empower youth leaders, youth workers, youth pastors, youth directors to just do everything they can to really listen and encourage and empower young people and just send them out, I think that is a beautiful thing.
So good. It's so good, Dan. And I think one of the things I love is that that's something you've really has been a huge part of your life. So we've got a number of mutual friends and people you've invested in hugely and raised up over the years. And they all say to me, one of Dan's amazing strengths is the way he invests his time, his energy, his wisdom, his kindness into us. And just say a bit about that. I know you probably would be too reticent to say too much, but say a bit about where that comes from in you, your desire to see the potential in people, call it out, and help people kind of in their journey.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That's very kind, whoever said that. But I think people did that for me. When I became a Christian when I was 18, people created space for me to have a go. People walked me when I failed. People prayed for me. And I think if it wasn't for those different people along my journey, I wouldn't have found out who I was in Christ, really stepping into the purpose that I'm living out now. I'd say my job that I'm doing right now is like my dream job. And I say that because I know not everyone gets the opportunity to say that, but I feel like I'm so blessed that I wake up every day. And if I was to write my own job description, like this is just the biggest blessing. But the reason I get to do that today is because all those people over the last 20 years who have done that for me. And so I never want to be in a place where I'm not creating margin in my diary for doing a lot of stuff, but not investing into people. And so, I really, look at my diary and my calendar, and sometimes people will say to me, can I just grab a coffee? And sometimes I reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? And I think if I'm creating space to raise up leaders, to listen to them, to learn from them, to encourage them and to empower them, I finished that week with a much more sense of purpose than I do from a load of meetings and got my job done. And so I guess for me, it's the extra mile. I think for me, the extra mile is not something you're made to do. It's something that you choose to do. In
Yeah.
Matthew 5, verses 41, when Jesus says, if someone asks you to go 1 mile, go for them too. So they didn't ask you to go the extra mile. And so for me, the extra mile is when I take that extra time out of, like, I guess what is in my job description, to sit with people, to really help them with the next step and just encourage them just to keep going, because it's easy just to give up and to wave the white flag. And unfortunately, there's a lot of youth leaders giving up at the moment because it's hard. But if I can just be a voice in the wilderness, just saying, I know it is hard, but God's going to be with you every moment, then that's what I want to do with my time.
And I imagine, Dan, that means sometimes you have to push back in terms of boundaries because different people have expectations of you. You've got a huge role. And what I sense and have always sensed speaking to you is that you have values, and that your leadership is very much the overflow of your values. And so you're willing to fight for those values. And have you had to overcome kind of a fear of, conforming to what others' expectations are or what other people think of you, and saying, no, this is how I want to do this, and I'm going to do it in this way, and that's the right way to do it. And so as you say, even if it looks a little bit different, even in terms of the margin of any given week, I'm going to fight for that and prioritize that.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being really honest with you, like I go hard, and I've always been passionate about what I do. If you're a professional footballer, you go hard. There's lots of professions where people go really hard. And when I say I go hard, I don't go hard at the expense of my family and my kids. If there's any red flags that we see, which is going to have a negative effect on them, like I'll be the first to say, I can't do that, I can't do this. But what I found is actually the people that do text me asking me for coffee, the people who do text me saying, Dan, can you pray for me? I'm not inundated. It's not like there's so many that I can't handle. And if I get to a point where it is too much, then of course I'll be the first person to say no. But what I found is if I naturally sort of say no to some things, and those things might be like the me things, the things that I love. That I guess that's where I'll really, if I'm being honest with you, I will say no to the things that I really love so that I can do the things that will help other people, which I find I love even more. And after, I'm really glad I've done it.
Yeah.
So let's just say I just want a day where I'm binging Netflix and I love watching shows. I just get immersed in it. It's another world. Give me a day with TV. That's my happy place. But I say no to some of those things in those moments so that I can say yes to helping others. And what I found is helping others actually energizes me and encourages me and helps me more than that Netflix show ever would. So I'm not regretting after I have made space for others.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. That's really helpful, Dan. And one of the things you've written a book, Fear 365, and just say a little bit about fear, because I think lots of people at Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're stepping out for the first time in leadership, incredibly bold, very courageous, But sometimes on the journey, you face fear. And maybe when you're stepping into a new room, or you're taking on a new responsibility, or maybe it's just, older people's expectations of you. And the same for youth leaders, church leaders. You can hit things where you just feel the fear. What's that journey look like for you? Because there must be a reason you've written that, and your own experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, before I became a Christian, before I decided to follow Jesus, I didn't really have any fear because, as soon as someone said, "Hey, do you want to speak here or do you want to do that?" I'd just be like, "No." But as soon as I became a follower of Jesus and this little word called obedience became a big part of my life, I just had to say yes. I had to face the fear, feeling it in the moment. And here's the thing, once you overcome one fear, just around the corner, there's another fear.
Mhm.
And I know that my journey, I'm becoming more like Christ, trusting in him more. And I've faced bigger fears than I've ever faced before, like this last year and the year before. But I know there's more bigger fears that are coming in the future. And David fought the lion and the bear in private before he fought Goliath in public. And so the good thing is that when we do face our fears, it helps us grow deeper in our relationship with Jesus, but also it helps others. And so, I'd always encourage anybody to not live that life in that comfort zone, as scary as it feels sometimes, but to take that step of faith. Because when you do, God meets you in that place and you grow deeper in him and you actually live out that purpose that he has for you.
Amazing, amazing. And what is there a practical tip you'd give someone? Say someone's got a thing at work tomorrow, or an exam they're afraid of. What is there any practical tips you could give of someone, like saying this is how walk them through it? Like how would they go about feeling that fear and then resolving to get past it? Are there practical kind of hacks you've experienced?
Yeah, I do this like all the time. Like I remember it was leadership conference online, and because it was online, they were expecting like 100,000 people to tune in. And I'd never spoken in front of 100,000 people before. And so all I had to do was like a little 10-minute segment where I'm interviewing young people. I'm not even got to say anything. But the night before, my speech and my language that I was speaking over myself and to my wife, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, it's just, what if I get a mind blank? And I'm just speaking all this negativity. And, my wife sort of like looked me in the face and said, kind of like, stop speaking so negatively. Like, get into your Bible, go and pray, go and do communion, get with God and start speaking truth over your life. And I did. And it was literally like after a half hour spending time in the presence of God, it's like that fear kind of disappeared. I'm like, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to go great. These young people are going to be championed. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would just say like, as soon as you're aware of the fear, be aware of your thoughts. Because if you can control your thoughts, they're like trains on a track. They can go to one station, and that station is of negativity and defeat, or it can go to another station where you can actually have a hope and expectation that God will do something great. And so as much as you can take control of those thoughts, fix your thoughts on the word of God, fix your thoughts in prayer, you will just find that he will do what he always does, which is supernaturally give you the boldness and the confidence and take away the fear.
That's so helpful. I love that. As soon as you're aware of the fear, be aware of as soon as you feel the fear, be aware of your thoughts and grip them. I think that's such great practical wisdom, Dan. And tell us a little bit, because talking about fear, I mean, you have done an enormous project. I don't think anyone really realizes quite how huge the youth film series is. And we're a benefit of it here. We did an amazing Alpha Youth, loads. I think every young person invited a friend. Awesome. And we're the beneficiaries of like years of blood, sweat and toil that you and your team put in. But the scale of that thing over kind of 18 months, 2 years, multi-continent, thousands of voices, loads of people involved, budgets, crews, directors, stakeholders you've got to manage and navigate, expectations. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, with massive imposter syndrome. So, when I started on staff with Alpha, I got to be honest with you, like I did have imposter syndrome where you don't think you've got what it takes, the gifting, the skills. You're sitting with people like Nicky Gumbel and a range of other super intellectuals who do an expository teaching on the Bible every single day. And I was just surrounded by greatness on every level. And so that kind of like whisper in your ear just got to me. And then also, yeah, I'd never looked after a budget like this. I'd never had to collaborate with, like, it was over 200 people creating something. And so it was definitely what I thought out of my skill set. But the beautiful thing is that all the way through scripture, God chooses these misfits with imposter syndrome, whether it's David or Moses or Peter or Paul, all the way through, God God almost uses these like underdogs so that when he does something, they don't get the glory or the credit, God does. And so today, like I sit here on this call with you, really celebrating what's happening on the world, what's around the world, really celebrating the stories, knowing there's not one bit of me which feels like I'm getting the credit or the glory for it, but it was just massively a God thing. And just working with creators all around the world, I've just learned and grown and developed so much. And so it was a great blessing, but I'd say, yeah, it was all God, and there's no way I can take credit for it. God just like weaved these like creative geniuses, like animators who worked on like Marvel stuff, and like directors who had worked with like I don't know, National Geographic and different levels of stuff, and then the hosts who are all Gen Z themselves, just brilliant on camera, but amazing character and a deep relationship with Jesus, and like God just wove it all together, and I just sat there every week just going, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
But it's amazing that because I think another of your values, it feels, is that you're desperate for the church to lead the way in creativity, and not just to be following in creativity. And when anyone who's seen, and I'd recommend anyone who hasn't had a chance to see the films yet, just that's so clearly woven through the DNA of the youth film series, that this is like a desire to push the envelope, push the boundaries. And tell us a little bit about where that desire for the church to lead creatively comes from, and how we can all be part of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think as soon as I became a follower of Jesus and I started reading the Old Testament and the New Testament, like, in Genesis 1, God is a creative God and he created us in his image. So when we display creative characteristics, we are giving glory to God. It's like, I am so proud and get so much joy out of seeing my son create, because I created him. And I think it's in the same way for God. And you don't need to be an artist to be creative. You can be a parent making a meal for your kids, or an accountant displaying some numbers on a way for people to understand it. So I think creativity is part of our human nature. And I think I was always been someone who enjoyed creativity and had a sense of wonder and awe when it came to artists. But I think after I worked for Hillsong London for about 8 years, and after 8 years, I was asked to hand over the youth ministry and be a creative pastor, take on social media and video and online services and all that. And when I was asked, in my head, I was like, I didn't go to Bible college to help people do dot to dot and coloring in. Like I wanna, help teenagers. So then I remember when I was asked to step out of youth ministry, and I didn't really want to because I just wanted to help teenagers. I just remember God just sort of saying, like, it's not your youth ministry, it's mine. And everything I give you, I just need you to steward it. So let go of the youth ministry, hold on to Jesus tightly, and take on this creative role. And as I got to lead the creatives, it was the most helpful thing for me because, youth pastors want feedback, creatives don't want feedback. So I learned just how to lead in that sphere, and I looked at everything they were doing, and one thing was called Media Collective, where they just gather creatives. And so I said, well, I'm a pastor, let me help with this. And we had like 100, 150 creators from church working for Adidas and Burberry, in front of camera, behind camera, artists and designers. And we came together. And in that moment, there was such a sense of community, which wasn't there before. And I guess in that moment, my heart just broke for the creative world. Then after 10 years at Hillsong, from one conversation leads to another conversation. I feel like it's time to go back into youth ministry. And Shayla Visser, who's the sort of director of Alpha Canada, just said, would you want to be sort of the global director for Alpha Youth? I said, I'd absolutely love to be that. She said, have you got youth ministry experience? I said, yes. She says, have you got creative experience? I said, yeah, I do. And I tell you that because even in the time I'm like, God, what are you doing here? Like, why am I leading creatives? God uses everything for his goodness and for his glory. And in that moment, he prepared me for what he had in the future. And so I think those 2 years of spending time with creatives gave me a heart for creatives. And so when it came to creating the series, sitting down with them, listening to them, learning from them, equipping them and empowering them, it was just sort of part of my bread and butter because it's what I'd done over the last 2 years.
And say, Dan, because that's a fascinating thing you said, that journey you go on with, because it seems to me that you're brilliant at leading, not just being a creative, but leading creatives, galvanizing, gathering, and growing creatives. And I know a number of creatives who've really flourished under your leadership. So what would you say to someone who's stepping into that space, leading creatives, or maybe they're a creative themselves, and because of their role, they're having to step up into that space of not just being a creative, but leading other creatives, and they're maybe sensing some of what you said, which is like, oh, this is a bit trickier than I thought. What would your advice be?
Yeah, I think two things. I think community and I think communication. I think you really need to know the health of your community, your creatives that you're working with. You know, you hear that quote, if the vision is not intimidating to you, it's insulting to God. Like we have to have a big vision. If not, it's insulting to God. But if the vision is so big that it's actually crushing and demoralizing to the creatives that you're working with, then I don't think that's honoring God either. So I think it's important that when we have vision, we've actually got people in a healthy space to help outwork that vision. And so I think, you know, community is key. And if the only time you are talking to them, spending time with them is when you're giving them a brief, then I think that's not community. That's just getting a load of people to do things for you. So a real sense of community would be the first thing. The second thing would actually be communication. We spend a lot of time giving the brief. This is what we're going to do. This is why we want to do it. This is who we're going to reach. And all of that normally is face to face. But then it's the feedback which is missed. The feedback is sometimes, oh, an email, do these things, a text, do this, a DM, do this. And there's this guy called Sir Albert Meribin, and he studied communication. And he says when it comes to communication, 5% of it is words, 45% of it is tone of voice, and 50% of it is body language. And when you think about the email, the text, the WhatsApp, the DM, that's just the 5%. And I've seen so many creatives, lead creatives, but actually things have been taken the wrong way because they've just sent the words. I know you can add an emoji at the end, but still, nothing beats face-to-face conversation. Give as much time to the feedback as you do to the brief. Let them know your heart, let them know your posture and how excited you are while you're actually giving them that feedback. And then again, that just builds trust, which enables a safer, healthier place to create.
Really, really helpful, Dan. That's really helpful. And say a bit about you're in this massive role, and your wife Charlie also doing a massive role for A21. And how do you manage the kind of complexities, the stress, the pressure of leadership and life? Like what are the things that enable you to thrive in the midst of all that you're carrying?
So there is a lot of spinning plates, and I think sometimes when one plate is spinning really well, one plate slows down. And so I think for us, we're just always aware of the spinning plates, and we're always looking at the spinning plates. If all you do is focus on one spinning plate, then they're all gonna fall, and you're just gonna have one spinning plate. So we spend a lot of time in communication. A21 is an anti-human trafficking organization, and so we're always having conversation with our boys. It's like, do you want to come and work for Alpha when you're older, or do you want to be a freedom fighter? Like, obviously they could be whatever, but I always want to make sure we're modeling like healthy value to both organizations, and daddy's job's not better than mummy's job, or mummy's job isn't better than daddy's job. But I think, you know, at the moment, we just take each week, each month, and each year as it comes. And as soon as it gets to a place where we're seeing too many red flags, then we'll have to change things and innovate. And I think probably one of the most important things we always have to do is just be flexible. We're both flexible individuals, always talking to each other. We do get it wrong. We do make mistakes. We do have arguments when one of us has dropped the ball, but we've got a family which is full of grace, full of forgiveness, and we just kind of keep moving forward.
And family's a real value, I know, for you both. And I think someone told me that your out of office was on last week, because you're quite rightly on holiday, and you were like, I'm on holiday with my... But you didn't just put your out of office on. You said, and I'm on holiday with my family. And family is like, it's not just a thing, it's the most important thing, or the most... that was your message. It's really, really powerful kind of... Again, it's like a kind of a statement of a value as part of an out of office thing. So say a bit about where that passion comes from, and why that's such a key thing in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a split family, and you know, the world will say that divorce equals dysfunctional family, but actually, God got involved, and He did turn all things around for good, literally. And I'm so blessed, you know, for my dad, my stepdad, my mom, my stepmom, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, like all of them. And I think the older I get, the more I value family. It's a funny thing when you have kids, all of a sudden you just appreciate your parents because you realize everything they went through for you. And so, yeah, I think for me, family is important because I never want to be someone who's doing things for Jesus and then I don't love and model that with my own kids and my own family. I don't want to be listening to X amount of teenagers and X amount of church leaders, but then I haven't listened to my own son when he's going through things, and my own wife. And so I think for me, integrity is who you are when everyone is looking. And integrity is who you are when no one is looking. Family, I think, is the place when no one is looking. And the thing is, if I'm being honest with you, I have shown my best of Dan Blythe to my family. Like I've never gone above and beyond for anyone else other than my family, but I've always also shown my worst at times when I'm stressed, I'm under pressure. And we do that because our family is our safe space and we know that we can behave in a certain way and they're not going to reject us. And so it's out of a place of love that sometimes you feel like you can get away with things. But I felt like it's important that I'm not preaching on a Sunday saying, come on, Jesus is about forgiveness and we should not gossip and we should be encouraging. And then live a different way with my family. So when I say family, what I mean is I just don't want to be a double person. I don't want to be Batman. I don't want to be Batman on the stage and Bruce Wayne, like this, separation. I want to be the guy, that you see in ministry with my family, getting it wrong in both places. But I think family is a great place where you start. It's a great place where you learn. It's a great place where you get it right first, because out of that overflow of it with your family, it pours out into the ministry. And if people are listening to this and they haven't had kids and they're like saying, well, yeah, but family's not my thing. I don't think family is about whether you've had kids or not. I think family is like your parents. It's your siblings. And if you don't have any parents or any siblings alive, be a spiritual father or mother. Jordan Dean, who we were talking about earlier, he was 15 when I met him in the youth ministry. He hasn't had kids. He's not married, but he's got a whole podcast about fatherhood and being a spiritual father to many people. And so I think the biblical kind of aspects of family are something that we can all live out as being Christians, whether we have kids or not.
Yeah, yeah, and I loved listening to you and Charlie talk about it on your Young Cubs podcast. It was really fun, and it's really inspiring to hear that. It's such an important message for our generation. I think just the priority of that and the importance of that. Dan, sometimes leadership can be hard, and you don't go through difficult seasons. And there are lots of you were talking about youth leaders, some youth leaders kind of stepping back from ministry and leaving. And how have you gone through times of disappointment, maybe failure, maybe times when things haven't worked out and there's been disappointment, and how have you stewarded those times well and come out the other side of them and yet still kept your passion and your hunger for what you do?
Yeah, I think, I've just chosen my hard, and I'd rather do the hard with Jesus than the hard without Jesus. Sometimes, when I talk about Jesus to people, they're like, oh, no, I don't think I could pick up my cross and follow him. It's too hard. And I would just say, yeah, just choose your hard. Some people say, oh, I couldn't give up, having sex with multiple partners. I'm like, great. They say it's too hard to have one partner and sex with one person, but I actually don't find that hard. I actually find it amazing. And then I chat with them and they're like, they're not happy, they're broke going on so many dates. And it's like, they've chosen their hard, I've chosen my hard. And I could give you so many different examples where people say, no, following Jesus is too hard. I'm doing this, but that kind of easy way, that sense of what they think is going to give them freedom, I don't see that giving them freedom. And what I find is choosing the hard with Jesus, I have a sense of freedom. And there's never been a dark valley that I've gone through that he hasn't been with me and helped me through. It's important that when you go through a dark valley, you don't camp in it, that actually you just keep walking. But as the quote says, the fruit doesn't grow on the mountaintop, it grows in the valleys. And when I think about some of the hardest things me and Charlie have gone through, whether it's like a miscarriage and Charlie having keyhole surgery, whether it's a whole national documentary came out. So this guy, when I was a youth leader, said, I would love to create a documentary on spirituality and young people. Okay, are you up for that? I'm like, yeah, great. Got all the sign off. For 4 years, he followed the youth ministry around, young people around, me and Charlie around, conversations with my kids. It's all going to be about spirituality and young people. We went to Israel to baptize a friend. We went all over the world. And then COVID hit. And, I was working for Hillsong. And at that time, everything kind of fell apart for Hillsong. And so if you're creating something, if it's got the name Hillsong on it, then it's going to go 10 times as far, if not more. And so the whole thing was edited in a way to be a piece about, the negativity of Hillsong. And it was so embarrassing for me. Like I had long blonde hair down to here. And so I got to be honest with you, it did take me time to get that mane in order. But like all they did was show clips of me getting my hair ready for the first like opening scene. So I come across as like the vainest guy in the world. And then me and Charlie made like this joke about she's wearing the Hillsong Worship Leader Starter Pack, which was like this like fedora hat and leather jacket. Like we were just having banter, not thinking that they're recording, but all that stuff they just put in, and they just put it in this, they just put it in this kind of documentary, which went national. And I had people texting me sort of saying, oh, Dan, I've never seen that side of you. I'm like, well, that's not really me. Like they've really manipulated this thing. And so that would be one of the hard moments that we remember, where both of us just bawled our eyes out every night trying to deal with being misrepresented. But then what we realize is that actually in life, we will always be misrepresented. And so, how much energy and emotion and time you give to what is out of your control is in your control. And so we just decided to give it to God and to press forward. And that hard time, that painful time, almost gave me like a scar. So now I can do what I do, and I'm not always fearing, being misrepresented, because if you get to hang out with me, hopefully you will like me, and I'm not that guy spending 30 hours working on my hair. I'd rather spend 30 hours helping people and 3 minutes on my hair.
Yeah. It's so, I like when you're going through a valley, don't camp in it. Keep walking. It's such an important piece of wisdom. Are there things, if someone listening to this is going through a hard season, and maybe they don't feel that it's like a documentary, but maybe they've fallen out with a friend, or they've lost a job, or just they feel disappointed about a part of their life. What would your advice? Is there something that they could put into their diary on a daily basis that might help them keep walking through that valley until they come out the other side of it?
Yeah, I think for me, what I've realized is that Romans 8 verses 28, that God turns all things around for good for those that love the Lord. I think if you really love God, and that you've just got a deep desire for him, just keep pressing into him, and what you'll find is that he'll use all of that past hurt, baggage, issues, no matter what it is, he can use it for his glory and for goodness for you. And what was a hardship for you actually might help someone else. And when you're in a place where you've been healed, then your weakness actually can become a strength to help other people. And so I would just say, whatever's happened in the past, don't live in it. There's a reason when you're driving, the rear view mirror is a lot smaller than the windshield, because you've got to be focused where you're going, not where you've just been. And I totally get that emotional memories are memorable memories. We remember our best moments and we remember our worst moments, and they're with us for life. But I would encourage you to really try and just dig deep into him and not allow those emotional past memories to really scope out the future of your life, because all the way through the scripture, God's like, it's a new day and it's a fresh start. I'm doing a new thing. And so I just encourage you to take that scripture and actually believe that over your life.
Amazing, Dan. And is there one more thing you'd love to encourage us with from your perspective, all that you're seeing? What gives you real hope in this season? What gives you hope as you look out?
Yeah, I think there is a level of vulnerability and honesty that I'm seeing in church leaders all around the world, in the Catholic Church, in the Church of England, in the Baptist, in the Pentecostal. And that level of openness and honesty and integrity and vulnerability is leading to a new sense of unity, which I've never seen before in the church. And especially with this generation, they're really keen to be united and to sit with different people with different perspectives and perceptions. And so I would just say, just keep being that leader that is up for unlearning and relearning, to allow questions and to just allow pride just to diminish that extra bit. We all have pride, but that journey of going from a follower to Christ, to being with him, to being like him and doing what he is doing, really is about us dismantling and letting go of pride and growing in the humility to be like Jesus. And so if we can just keep pressing in to that humility, allow that sense of unity, I think it's going to be really, really exciting times ahead for the church.
Oh, Dan, you've really blessed everyone, I'm sure, today, and so much gold and wisdom. And we're cheering you on and praying for you as you kind of travel around the globe. So important. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. And I thank you that, Stephen, you're a leader who doesn't just talk and post on social media about helping young people, but you actually do it on the ground day in and day out. So very grateful for you.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us on The Thread, and we look forward to seeing you next time.